Hello friends, my name is Forge. I've played the Splatoon series since May 28th, 2015, Splatoon 1's release date. I'm here today to present my reasoning for why Splatoon 3, the most recent game in the Splatoon franchise, doesn't hit the same for me like the older games Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, but I think it's safe to say I'm in the minority on this one. Super excited to get this video started because this is something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. This breakdown will be broken down into several sections, being as thorough as possible. Whether you're like me, a veteran since day one, somewhere in the middle, or you've never played Splatoon, I really hope you enjoy. Splatoon 1 released on May 28th, 2015 as a new, fresh, exciting game for the Wii U. Despite the Wii U's miserable 13.5 million total copy sales, the first game of this soon-to-be popularized series scored almost 5 million sales. To put that into perspective, that means that over a third of all Wii U owners also bought Splatoon 1. Even though not many people bought a Wii U when compared to the Wii or the Switch, the fact that over a third of all users were willing to try out a brand new game says a lot. Wii U owners were excited for Splatoon. It was vibrant, uncharacteristic, and most notably, something new, considering what was on the Wii U game market at the time. Then, only 2 years later, on July 21st, 2017, Splatoon 2 dropped on the brand new Nintendo Switch. Unlike Splatoon 1, Splatoon 2 was released on an unbelievably successful console. It's been 7 years since 2017, the year of the Switch's release, and so far it's sold a total of 141 million copies. Remember, the Wii U only sold 13.5 million copies, so the Switch outsold the Wii U by well over 100 million copies. And yet Splatoon 2 only sold 13.5 million copies, just about 9 more million than Splatoon 1. It's still an impressive number, don't get me wrong, but with a console as big as the Switch, some might think that the numbers for Splatoon 2 would be a lot higher. Other huge Switch releases like Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart 8 understandably stole a lot of Splatoon 2's spotlight though. Even though Splatoon 2's initial spotlight was stolen, it made up for this by claiming title as newest Splatoon game for 5 years. Splatoon 1 remained as the most recent game for only 2 years, whereas Splatoon 2 wore the title for 5 years. This reason alone is why it's currently the best-seller series, seeing as Splatoon 1 was only prime for 2 years and Splatoon 3 has only been prime for less than 2 years. Splatoon 3 was released also on the Nintendo Switch on September 9, 2022. It too was propelled in sales because of being launched on a successful console. However, it never had the factor of an early console game like Splatoon 2 did. Despite this, Splatoon 3 is currently just about 2 million copies shy of Splatoon 2, and the game hasn't even been out for 2 whole years, a testimony to the growth of the Splatoon fanbase. Like Splatoon 1 and 2, people were excited for Splatoon 3, especially since Splatoon 2 had the spotlight for 5 years. Players were ready for the next, new exciting Splatoon game, hoping it would be even better than the previous one they had loved for so long. I was one of those people. I absolutely loved Splatoon 2, but there were things I hated about it. I thought Splatoon 3 would be that game that took the franchise to the next level, and it did, sorta, but it also failed on a number of new levels unseen in Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2. Allow me to provide a little bit of context so that you can better understand my position where I'm coming from. Splatoon 1 released when I was 10. It was the game that got me into video gaming as a whole. So naturally, this series is close to me. When I think back on my Splatoon 1 days, strangely enough, all the memories that come to mind are happy ones. I really don't have any bad memories from where everything started. Perhaps this is because I was so young, or because it was my first real exposure to video games. Of course, when I went back to try Splatoon 1 after Splatoon 2's release, those good memories did not deliver anymore. The game felt clunky, laggy, and impossible to hide from hackers. However, I think this was everyone's experience as well. We never realized how bad Splatoon actually was until we played Splatoon 2. Even if Splatoon 1 is a bad game, which let's be honest, it kinda is, it at least made a connection with the player. The game is unforgettable, even though there's a lot going wrong with it. Splatoon 2 is just as memorable, but there's a lot less going wrong. As in any franchise, whether it's movies, video games, book series, or anything really, it always seems harder to create sequels that are just as enjoyable as the originals. The original is entertaining and enjoyable. It's a breath of fresh air. And when the next one in line arrives, people expect those similar feelings. Honestly, the developers of Splatoon have done a really great job at this. Splatoon 2 improved from Splatoon 1 by a long shot, and Splatoon 3 on paper improved from Splatoon 2 as well. In fact, there's so many things Splatoon 3 improves from in 1 and 2 that it makes no sense why Splatoon 3 is not the best game in the series. Let's quickly go over the things Splatoon 3 does better. First, and probably the best new feature of Splatoon 3, is 24/7 Salmon Run. Don't worry, we'll get to the new skip option in a second, I know you guys want to hear that. Personally, I don't really play a lot of Salmon Run on a daily basis, but I know a huge portion of Splatoon 3 fans are die-hard Salmon Runners, and boy do I have a lot of respect for you. The fact that in Splatoon 2, Salmon Run had limited play hours made no sense. Seriously, if you never played Splatoon 2 Salmon Run, we could only play at certain times, had no egg throw, and we had no king salmons to look forward to. Y'all are so lucky. Next is customization, specifically the banners. Customization was definitely lacking in 1 and 2, but Splatoon 3 makes customization a reality with the banners including the badges, titles, and backgrounds. The little dance emotes are a nice addition as well. I would include lockers as a part of the customization success, but they absolutely failed. A discussion for later in the video. Then we have the replay function. This function is unbelievably useful. I never realized how much I needed this. If Splatoon 2 had this, well, let's just say that would have been nice. But seriously, the replayability is so nice because it allows for people to review their games and footage. Now they don't have to record it and pull it up on their laptop. Additionally, the ability to watch from any player's point of view is such a nice addition. Now we get to the new skip option, what you all want to hear. Again, if you never played Splatoon 1 or 2, then you will never understand how satisfying this addition was to us veterans. In 1 and 2, every time you booted up the game, you had to endure through every single news broadcast. No workarounds. Oh, those good times of just smashing my A button for 20 seconds! Those who grew up on Splatoon 3 have no idea how fortunate they are to have this function. The 24/7 Any Stage Recon Edition was a nice touch as well. I remember so many frustrating times getting on Splatoon 2 to test something on a stage, skimming through the news, just to realize I can't because the stage wasn't on a rotation. It's not my fault y'all got so many stages. Seriously, who at Nintendo made the system work like that? This new feature is a rare example of Nintendo realizing their mistake and correcting it. I think a lot of people had an issue, especially towards the end of Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2, where they maxed out their money but had nothing to do with it. Well, Splatoon 3 more than fixed this issue. I mean, is it really an issue to be so rich that you have nothing to spend your money on? The shellout machine gives the player rewards like items for your locker, titles for your banner, background for your banner, food and drink tickets, and for some reason, money? Okay, I couldn't actually find any footage of actually getting money from the shellout machine. I think you have to finish leveling up your catalog, but I haven't done that, so just believe me, alright? Continue. But anyways, at least the shellout machine gives you something to spend your money on, even if it's useless. This one's really simple, but more gear. One of Splatoon 3's problems is that it relies too much on Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2 in certain areas. But hey, I'm so glad they kinda like brought all the gear back from 1 and 2 and with new gear from Splatoon 3. I like gear, alright? More gear allows for even better outfits. And worse outfits too, I suppose. Finally, compared to Splatoon 1 and 2, the graphics in Splatoon 3 are just by far better. Plus, everything is brighter when battling. I never even realized this until I went back to Splatoon 2 to try it out, but man, it makes a huge difference. So yeah, that's all I can think of what Splatoon 3 does better on a micro and a macro level. I know you guys are going to have a micro level to notice the very smallest things, but I'm just not going that small, otherwise this video would be even longer than what it is. Since the game is still in play, there's more stuff to come like DLC, but that stuff doesn't really apply to what we're talking about because it's not fundamental in the game, unlike everything I just listed. Now it's time to get into the first general point of why Splatoon 3 doesn't feel like the best game in the series. Splatoon 3 stresses its number in the series way too much. If you played Splatoon 1 or Splatoon 2, were you ever reminded that you were playing the first or second Splatoon game? Well, I sure wasn't. But in Splatoon 3, you are constantly reminded that you're in the third game. When you enter the news, you'll be greeted with 3 idols instead of the normal 2. When it comes to plaza location, you can choose from 3 different designs. Splatfest were especially catered toward this number. Instead of 2 teams, now you get 3 teams. Not to mention the addition of whatever tricolor was supposed to be. Man, what a mess that was. In every aspect of Splatoon 3, it's easy to see the imprints of the number 3 present. I don't necessarily think this whole number theme is bad. Nintendo was probably worried the game wouldn't stand out if it followed the same paths of 1 and 2, so it tried to make Splatoon 3 stand out in unique ways. However, these ideas backfired. Instead of the game feeling unique, it feels like a whole different game from Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2 because of these fundamental changes. The point is, Splatoon 3 deviates too much from Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2, often because of overemphasizing the theme of 3. And of course, there are also drastic fundamental changes that don't relate to the theme of 3, like the erasement of League. Ironically though, at the same time, Splatoon 3 relies much too heavily on Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2 in certain areas. For starters, the kits. For every weapon in Splatoon 3 that also existed in 1 or 2, its kit is influenced by its kit in the past games. I do kinda like this idea, but it really hurts weapons that got bad kits in the first 2 games. I don't know if Nintendo was too scared to create new kits, or maybe they're just lazy. But 52 having wall in all 3 games is by far unfair. Weapons that had good past kits will continue to have good kits, 52, and weapons that have bad kits tend to remain to have bad kits. I mentioned earlier that Splatoon 3 incorporates all gear from past games, Splatoon 1, Splatoon 2, and the new gear created in Splatoon 3. There's a lot of gear to choose from. But what's interesting is that with all the gear currently available, all my favorite pieces of gear are still from Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2. When I think of memorable gear from Splatoon 1, the power armor and those quick respawn headphones come to mind. The sneaky beanie and king flip mesh will always remind me of Splatoon 2. But when I think of Splatoon 3, all my favorite pieces of gear are from 1 and 2. There just aren't any memorable gear pieces from 3. I suppose the Krusty Sean outfit does live rent-free in my head though. I get it, it's hard to create new gear that's both stylish and memorable, but this is really disappointing. It's sad that some goofball outfit that doesn't even look good is what I will remember as Splatoon 3 gear. It's just difficult for me to make a connection with Splatoon 3 because so many of its attributes that I like are from pre-existing games, from pre-existing connections, from pre-existing games. I would be fine if the game didn't include any gear from previous games. At least being limited to Splatoon 3's gear would start some sort of connection. Furthermore, let the kits in 3 be their own thing. Don't rely on old kits to guide the new ones. This is what really confuses me about Splatoon 3. The devs changed so many fundamental aspects, but then didn't even create actual new kits and brought all the gear from before. It's just such a bad mixture of unnecessary new and return of the past. For my last general reason why Splatoon 3 isn't the best game in the Splatoon series, Splatoon 3 had to follow up 2 previous Splatoon games. This is pretty obvious and understood, so there's not a lot to say. As already mentioned, sequels and games next in the series seem to continually become harder to improve upon. Splatoon 3 actually accomplished this though, in so many ways, but because of fundamental deviations that we just went over, Splatoon 3 falls short of Splatoon 2. It seems like the developers just went overboard on changes. They thought that in order for players to find Splatoon 3 more enjoyable than Splatoon 2, all these adaptations were necessary, and they were wrong. There's still much more to discuss why Splatoon 3 failed as the best game in the Splatoon series. So far, I've presented pretty big, general, overview reasons for why Splatoon 3 isn't the best game in the series. But now I present to you still big reasons, but with much more detail and examples. Let's start with what the Splatoon 3 devs missed out on. What would have made the game better? These are Splatoon 3's missed opportunities. If you were like me, when you first got Splatoon 3, you were mesmerized by how spacious the plaza area of Splatsville was. You investigated the whole area, only to discover the place is extremely empty. I don't know why this bothers me so much, but it does. Splatoon's 1 plaza felt so connected. Every area had a location or purpose. Spike's alleyway was so cool and iconic. Splatoon 2's plaza was also connected, except for that one area where the jellyfish just ride their skateboards, but hey, that's still pretty cool. Splatoon 3's plaza is so much bigger, which is cool, but there's nothing to really fill it up. Oh wait, there's that table turf area stuck in the most obscure area of all time. To be fair, there is the recon worker, but when I was trying to do recon for the first time, I had so much trouble just finding the worker. Why make the plaza so spacious and cool, but not put anything in it to fill it up? If you played Splatoon 1, do you remember what the only special returned in Splatoon 2? That's right, Bomb Rush, baby. Well, I guess Nintendo got bored of it because for some reason they gave it the boot. Seriously, this makes no sense. Why did Bomb Rush not return for Splatoon 3? Nintendo really chose to revive Zuka, then bring back the classic special, another example of Splatoon 3 deviating from 1 and 2. And Bomb Rush was not a broken special by any means. It was a steady, mid-tier special at best in 1 and 2. Imagine if Bomb Rush was around for Crab Meta. That would have been such an exciting counter!
Hi.
This one isn't as important, but it still bothers me that after 3 Splatoon games, we still only have 2 communication options. The D-pad really should include the other arrow keys. Now I'm not sure what they should say, or I don't even know what I want them to say, but they should be utilized. Help is an option in Salmon Run. Maybe that could be an option for when I'm getting 1v4 teammates. But just know, this isn't just a Splatoon 3 problem, it's a 1, 2, and a 3 problem. Special order! This next one is another example of Splatoon 3 breaking the streak and deviating from 1 and 2. When someone asks you for the most notable Splatoon stage, the most well-known, the most iconic Splatoon stage in the series, you would answer, all together now, Moray Towers. But wait, it isn't in Splatoon 3? What's a Splatoon game without the most well-known stage in it? I don't even care that it's a bad stage. Moray Towers just makes me feel good because it makes me think of the Splatoon series as a whole. On a personal note, I'm salty Urchin Underpass and Snapper Canal haven't returned, but that's just me. There is the possibility that Moray will make an appearance in a final update, but Moray returned at Splatoon 2's launch, not in an update.
What else do you have?
Alas, it's finally time to address the biggest, most dramatic, most crushing, most heartbreaking, most despicable missed opportunity in Splatoon's history. This too is yet again another example of Nintendo breaking the norm and deviating from Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2. Splatoon 3 got rid of League.
I am going to spend the next minute screaming.
I can't tell you how disappointed I was when League was not included at Splatoon 3's launch. But then Nintendo said, oh hey, yeah, it's coming, just wait. But then it never came! This is arguably the worst history in Nintendo's company history. For those who don't know me personally, you have no idea how much not having League hurt me. League was the main thing me and my brother FantaFizz did during Splatoon 2's lifetime. We grinded League so much, and eventually it paid off. We managed to get the highest twin power in North America as well as the highest quad power in North America. So proud. So not having League meant we lost the main thing we loved about Splatoon. I could no longer grind with my brother or play normally with my routine friends. For me, that reason alone is why Splatoon 3 can never be as good as Splatoon 2. But Forge, Open is League. Dumber words have never been said. There is so much wrong with Open, and I look forward to tearing it up in a future section.
Hello.
Splatoon 3's final 2 missed opportunities suffer from the same issue: failure to be well incorporated. I got one question for you guys. Have you ever played the Table Turf sideboard game thing, whatever it's called? I played it once and it bored me to death. As if its boring characteristics weren't enough to make it forgettable, its location and lack of incorporation into the main Splatoon 3 game make Table Turf instantly forgettable. I mean, what's even the purpose of it? We already have Turf War, Ranked, Private Battles, Recon, Salmon Run, Story Mode, DLC, and the list goes on. Why do we need some lame card game in the mix? The game does try to remind you that it even exists by rewarding you with cards from the general store and sometimes in the shell-out machine, but those are just junk to the most of us. I know there's a small portion of the community that does enjoy Table Turf, and I'm glad some people are enjoying it, but I can confidently say that most of us have barely even touched it. Truthfully though, I do like the addition of Table Turf. It's still really boring, but I think it would have been a good minigame to do while waiting in between games. But it's nowhere near entertaining enough for me to play over online battles.
I bet they do.
Lockers suffer from a similar condition. The whole point of lockers is to put trinkets and decorations in to express yourself. And the whole point of the general store is to buy various items to put into your own little locker. Let me just say first that these items are way overpriced. I don't know what's going on in Splatsville, but that is some crazy inflation. A lot of the items available are really cool. At the beginning of Splatoon 3, the lockers fascinated me. I was excited to customize and decorate my own locker. However, the wow factor instantly fizzled out. And why? Because Nintendo failed to make the lockers relevant in any way possible. First, the lockers are located in a separate, uninkable room, so just getting there is a pain. And once you actually make it there, you can fiddle with your locker and also check out for other lockers from your friends list. Besides that, lockers have no other purpose. But Forge, what else are lockers supposed to do? Well, that's true, they're not supposed to do much. But a good start would be moving the location to where players are actually waiting for games. Don't hide them in some remote room away from the dummies where most of the people are. Secondly, find a new way to incorporate them. I always thought it would be cool if the lockers were mounted on the splash tag. That way, other people will actually see them when you splat them.
Corre, corre, gatito.
Moving on from what could have been, or what should have been, it's time we focus on what Splatoon 3 got wrong. What mishaps and miscues does Splatoon 3 suffer from? These are Splatoon 3's overextensions and disasters. There's so much to address in this section, so ready yourself. I don't know anything about netcoding, but quite a few people complain that Splatoon 3's netcoding is really bad. That's all I'm going to say, because I don't know what else to add, so I'm just going to leave it there. Just want to get out there first. Do you like this tune? How about this one? Alright, how about this one? And finally, what do you think of this one? Yeah, that one is from Splatoon 3. No surprise there. When it comes to music, I don't care about how many bad songs there are in a game, as long as there is a handful of good ones. Unfortunately, Splatoon 3 doesn't really have any original catchy tunes, and again relies on Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2 to provide enjoyable music via the jukebox. I wasn't super impressed with Splatoon 2's soundtrack, but that one song from Chirpy Chips always hits home, and Into the Light is probably the most iconic Splatoon tune of all time. While working on this video, I listened to the entire Splatoon 1 official soundtrack and I was blown away, oh my goodness. The Splatoon 1 soundtrack is absolutely unbelievably good because almost every single battle song and story mode tune is a bop. If there is a Splatoon 4, the music directors need to study what worked so well in Splatoon 1. Truthfully though, there is one tune from Splatoon 3 that I do like, but it's the only one. Shout out to you, Mr. Grizz.
What'd you say?
The number one problem I have with Splatoon 3 is that it fails to make a connection with the player. You've already heard me say that a few times, and you're gonna hear me say it a lot more. When I think back to why Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2 felt memorable, the shops and their respective owners come to mind. Sure, this is a smaller detail, but the small details are what make connections strong. Splatoon 1 shopkeepers were cool, Splatoon 2's were less cool, and Splatoon 3's were just atrocious. To be honest, when I was working on this script, I couldn't even remember what the shopkeepers in Splatoon 3 even are or what they look like. That's just how bad and forgettable they are. I'll never forget you though, Annie. And the continuation of the Jalfonso guy is just straight up sad. They should have left him to just stay in Splatoon 1.
What do you look?
If you think Splatoon 1 stages are bad, you're wrong. If you think Splatoon 2 stages are bad, you're right. And if you think Splatoon 3 stages are bad, you're wrong. They're terrible. Eeltail, Scorch, and especially Mincemeat are the worst stages in Splatoon's history, and it's not even close. I'll happily take Bluefin over any of these pieces of crap. I didn't think Nintendo could create anything worse than Gobi Arena, but man, they proved me wrong. Splatoon 3 stages are on a whole nother level of atrociousness. After so many Splatoon 2 stages, I said to myself, it's alright Forge, Nintendo will hear our outrage and better themselves for Splatoon 3. Shame on me for thinking Nintendo would actually listen to their fans or that they would even try to fix their mistakes. As bad as the Splatoon 2 stages are, Nintendo found a way to consistently make all the Splatoon 3 stages worse. Well, maybe not Undertow, I love you Undertow, and Hagglefish, I respect you too. Other than those two stages, the rest of Splatoon 3 stages are just depressing.
Soldiers!
Throughout the Splatoon series, in every game, there have been problematic specials. What if I told you that Nintendo took the most problematic special from both Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2 and paired them up together with a new problematic special for Splatoon 3? That's right, Kraken has returned, albeit in a more restricted form now. And Tentamissiles, the most problematic special in Splatoon history, returns for Splatoon 3. And what does Nintendo do with these two monsters, you ask? It gives it a third head by creating a liquid that allows you to move like a hacker and summon the power of quick response from Splatoon 1. Oh, and you can super jump faster than Sonic. After talking about these three specials, I actually almost forgot about Zuka in Splatoon 3. Just kidding, it's impossible to forget about a special that lasers you from halfway across the map without you even seeing it. Even in its moderate form, Zuka is out of control. Just imagine if Nintendo brought it back in its true form.
Mario!
On this topic, I would like to take a quick moment to examine why Zuka and Kraken are so much more problematic in Splatoon 3 rather than their original game, Splatoon 1. In Splatoon 1, what could counter Kraken? Well, there's Bubbler, a temporarily shield of invincibility, and if Bubbler doesn't include any weapons that fit your playstyle, Killer Whale can be used as another means. With Killer Whale, you could actually create a thin layer of protection where Kraken couldn't reach you. The point is that there were counterplays to Kraken, but at the end of the day, it's still Kraken. It's gonna do its thing, but workarounds are still viable with good team coordination. Fast forward to Splatoon 3, where Kraken, even in its modest form, has no counter. Bubbler no longer works because the Kraken can just charge right through that thing like it's nothing. Inkvac doesn't work either because Kraken easily outpaces it. Crab can kinda work, but its shell won't hold up for very long and it's slow, leaving you vulnerable. And Inkjet only delays the inevitable.
Mario!
Zuka, or Inkzuka, as it was termed in Splatoon 1, was definitely a good special. But what if I told you it wasn't the best special, even though it had unlimited shots under its time limit? That might be hard to imagine, seeing as it's easily the best special in Splatoon 3, where it has 3 shots. Well, that's because Zuka in its true form fit in pretty well with all the other broken specials in Splatoon 1. However, the main reason why Zuka wasn't that problematic in Splatoon 1 is because of the stages. In Splatoon 1, most stages were wide, expansive, and most had different levels of terrain. But in Splatoon 3, where most maps are condensed, small, and maintain somewhat of a normative terrain level, even with only 3 shots, Zuka is able to laser anyone even from afar, thus marking itself as Splatoon 3's most problematic special.
No more messing around.
There simply is no counterplay to Splatoon 3's meta specials. The counter to Zuka is better map design, which is unachievable pretty much at this point. The counter to Cooler is, well, there really isn't a counter, you just gotta try to kill him. And there's no counter to Kraken besides running away.
Nothing to see here.
Salmon Run is honestly pretty fun, even though it gets boring easily, at least for me. Because of this, I don't play a ton of Salmon Run. But if you want Salmon Run exclusive items, you might as well give up or otherwise put your life on pause for a while, because a lot of pieces of gear, banners, and trinkets are ridiculously monotonous to get. Let's take the Captain Cuttlefish hat for example. 30 gold scales for the hat. Doesn't sound too hard on paper, right? Well, gold scales are the rarest form of scale that comes from the King Salmons in Salmon Run. In order to just fight a King Salmon, you first have to complete 4 or 5 rounds. In order to complete 1 round, you have to complete 3 waves. Then when it finally appears, chances are you aren't going to beat it if you're playing with randoms. When playing with a coherent group though, these guys gradually become easier. Alright, so all I gotta do is beat 30 King Salmons, and then I get the hat, right? Well, that's what you'd think, right? But nope. In my experience, you only get a gold scale half the time at most. Sometimes you get one, most of the other times you just don't. The Cuttlefish hat isn't even close to being the toughest item to achieve though. Just look at this banner for the low price of 333 gold scales. After explaining how long the Cuttlefish hat would take to get, just 30 gold scales, I'll let you start imagining how long this would realistically take.
Here's the thing. I'm never wrong.
I love customization, and Splatoon 3 does a great job of expanding this category. But you know what sucks? Going through hundreds of title options just to pick 2 in the end. Now don't get me wrong, I'm glad there's a lot of titles to choose from. If there were too little titles available, we would see a lot of repetitive title combos, although we still kinda do. However, the devs went overboard on the titles. I hate how I have to go through hundreds of different titles, contemplating all the different combinations I could do to end up only picking 2 in the end. It's especially annoying when you can only view like 10 on the screen at once, while the other 100 are hiding off screen. With each new season expanding the number of titles, the whole title picking process progressively becomes more frustrating and more discouraging to even try.
Mario!
We all know Nintendo loves creating new stuff just so they can say they made something new. But oftentimes, this new content is stale, boring, and soon forgotten about. Splatoon 3 and Splatoon as a general franchise has struggled with this issue when it comes to kits. Too many times, we've witnessed that Splatoon developers create new weapons or new variants with terrible kits. I'm sure you can think of many from each Splatoon game. However, Splatoon 3 definitely suffers the most from bad kits. From a competitive perspective, in Splatoon 1, you could say there was a meta. This meta was loose though, because most of the specials were all kinda broken, some more than others for sure though. But because most of the specials were all pretty good, It allowed for more of a variety, because the higher amount of good specials there are in the game, the more fluid the meta will be because of a higher rate of generally good kits. One could say the sub-weapon has an influence too, but not as much as the special has, 52 being the only exception to that with Splash Wall. Pencil has the worst special, Sprinkler, but it's still one of the best weapons in Splatoon 3 solely because it has Cooler. Splatoon 2 took a turn for the worse on this topic as well. During the early days, the meta was adjusting and changing pretty often, but towards the end, things began to solidify. Armor, Ray, and Missiles were really the three meta specials in Splatoon 2. Then, when Kensa 52 dropped, the meta sealed, allowing for a quad shooter meta of Custom Jet, NZAP, Kensa Shot, and Kensa 52 to sink in. Of course, there was some variation from this depending on the map mode combo, especially with regular Jet becoming really popular at the end, but it's safe to say this was by far the most popular meta in Splatoon 2's life. But somehow, Splatoon 3 amplifies the problem of weapons being too dependent on their kit. It does so by only having two meta specials in its game. When you only have two meta specials, that means that the meta will mainly revolve around those two specials. Of course though, that doesn't mean that each weapon in the meta comp has Zuka or Cooler. In the beginning, the meta consisted of Crab and then Machine, oddly enough. Machine had Booyah Bomb, but it wasn't meta for that. It was meta because the weapon itself was the strongest at the time. After some time though, we landed in the meta land of Cooler and Zuka, and we've been stuck here for a while. Crab faded away as a meta special because Zuka absolutely cooks it. Now that's not to say that Crab isn't necessarily good anymore, but it doesn't see as much spotlight these days because of Zuka. So you see, if your weapon doesn't have Zuka or Cooler as its special, the chances are high that it won't be usable in the competitive realm, thus creating dead weapons.
Do you have any skills? No.
Staying in the realm of competitive Splatoon 3, it's time we address X-Rank. Unlike Splatoon 2's X-Rank system, in Splatoon 3, X-Rank doesn't punish you with a minus 57 for losing, even though you went 25-7 but your sploosh went 1-14. Now if that happens, you'll have 2 more games to spare before you suffer the consequences of not having the same luck as a lottery winner. However, that doesn't mean Splatoon 3's X-Rank system is inherently better than Splatoon 2's system. Back then, it was more about not losing than winning because one loss could send you down an unclimbable hill. But now it's just about who can play the most while still winning the most series. I never liked X-Rank's system in Splatoon 2, and I don't like it anymore in Splatoon 3. 3 wins before 3 losses is way too generous, thus tanking the value of X-Power. But there's still something else terribly wrong with Splatoon 3's X-Rank system: divisions. In Splatoon 3, X-Rank is split into 2 divisions. The Takaroka division covers Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, and of course Japan. The Tentatek division includes South America, Europe, and North America. I don't know who at Nintendo thought this would be a good idea, but I would love to have a word with them. In what world would divisions be a good idea? Make 2 divisions and one will be lopsided. Make too many and there aren't enough players to keep all the divisions active. I guess Nintendo's idea was to try to keep matches somewhat more localized in hopes to reduce lag and latency, and I understand that. But then why give the option to choose which division to play in? Giving players that option nullifies the whole idea. Everyone knows the Takaroka division, which includes Japan, is the better of the 2, which is why the Takaroka division is so easy to find games any time of the day because most people from all over the world are in that division. When grinding for a top 10 X badge, I had the hardest time just finding games in the Tentatek division. When I did find games, it was the same people over and over. Luckily though, I finally got the badge. But I vowed never to touch X-Rank again because life in the Tentatek division is miserable, boring, and a waste of time. On a less competitive note, there is much to discuss why Open failed as the alternative to League. When Splatoon 3 first came out, League was non-existent. This concerned a lot of people. For a moment, we thought we would be stuck with Open and League would be left behind. But then in an announcement soon after Splatoon 3's release, Nintendo said, "Hey, don't worry, it's coming, just wait a little bit." Alright, even though we prefer League to be here now, we can wait, because League is worth waiting for. Well, we waited until challenges dropped, and then all would be revealed that League would not be returning as we initially worried. Allow me to take us on a quick detour to address challenges, and then we'll get back to Open. Challenges are a pathetic excuse of League. It's a cheap knockoff version that makes League warriors like me burn with frustration. I can't really remember if I've even played a challenge before because Nintendo ruined them. Instead of League being just a nice little addition to rank modes with a rotation power available anytime, now there's supposedly cool limited edition events that are extremely boring despite the antics getting shacked. Nintendo realized this quickly and tried to spruce things up a bit by adding wacky event modes with mods. If that wasn't enough, they even announced challenges on the Splatoon news with a no-skip news lock, and they post the winners on the official Splatoon Twitter account. Well, they usually do, unless you get political, as I found out. I guess I did do a challenge. So what's the downside of challenges when they have all these things going for them? Well, they suffer from the same problem Salmon Run had in Splatoon 2, but amplified 100%. These stupid challenges happen like once or twice a month. League wasn't meant to be blown up into some big event that rarely happens. What angers me most is that Nintendo taunts us forever by using the League logo as a logo for challenges. A slap in the face for League. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get back to Open. Why does it fail as the new League? Well, traditionally, League existed in two separated categories. Pairs, a group of 2 against 3 other pairs, and quads, a group of 4 against another group of 4. Technically, Splatoon 1 had a trio option, which would sometimes match trios against quads, but we're not going to count that one. Open tears down all the barriers and allows for mixed fighting groups of any size so long as the game still operates as a 4v4 on the screen. In Open, it doesn't care if you're by yourself or playing with just one friend. If the numbers align, you have a very good chance of getting teamed up with random solo players or a pair plus another random solo to fight against a coordinated quad. Again, who thought this would be a good idea? This algorithm creates unfair games every single minute. Barriers worked perfectly fine in Splatoon 2's League to ensure fair fights. Although that doesn't mean that your pair is going to be on the same skill level as your opponent's pair, but the fact that 4 random solo players can get paired up to fight against a coordinated quad is ludicrous. As Billy would say,
Do better.
There is a special order!
there's still some major things going wrong with Open, and one of those things is the point system. Do you guys remember the X-Rank point system in Splatoon 2? Well, Nintendo basically copied that system and ported it into Splatoon 3 as the Open point system. Sometimes I actually think that's what Nintendo did, because every time I play Open, especially as a quad, we average about +1 for wins, and we lose about 100 for a loss. I'm seriously not joking about the loss average. If you don't believe me, just ask any of my Open friends, they can attest. At times, it feels harsher than X-Rank from Splatoon 2. Playing as a pair is somewhat better, but only in the case of getting points. Usually we only get +1, but once in a while, a +20 will happen. If it isn't obvious enough how Open pales in comparison to League, there's still one more disgrace to go over. Nothing felt better after grinding an intense League rotation than checking all the names on the leaderboard to see who we beat. Well, too bad, because Open decided this was unnecessary. To be fair, they still provide a leaderboard that only tells you where you place in the rotation, but that's it. Maybe if matches weren't mixed, then we would be able to have a functional leaderboard. At least Open has a trophy system that's displayed on the terminal, but the trophy system existed in Splatoon 2. It was just only viewable through the app. League was in Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2, but again, Splatoon 3 breaks the norm by trying to be its own thing. And why don't they display the gains and the losses from games on the screen like in Splatoon 2? Splatoon 3 really out here tests my memory and math skills. Like, come on, you really gotta do that? When it comes to Splatoon 3 breaking norms though, nothing does it more so than the Splatfest. I've never really been a big fan of the Splatfest, mainly because I hate turf war, but I try to at least get the highest title to get maximum snails as possible. I have no memory of actually playing any Splatoon 1 Splatfest, but the dog and cat statues always washed me with a wave of childhood. For some reason though, I love the Splatoon 2 Splatfest. Maybe the shifty stations really are the X factor. I remember grinding almost every single Splatfest trying to get the highest power I could, but in Splatoon 3 I lost all interest for Splatfest. It's not even the themes I'm upset about, even though they're trash. It's the fact that there are 3 teams instead of 2. I hate the idea of 3 Splatfest teams in every way possible. Towards the end of Splatoon 2, it became clear that Nintendo was running low on good theme ideas, and I can't blame them honestly. But now with 3 teams, the need for good themes becomes all the more important. But my main problem with 3 teams is that the Splatfest itself feels so disconnected now. With 2 teams, it felt rewarding beating the other team in a game because you were directly contributing to your team and directly hurting the other team. With 3 teams, the contribution feels minuscule, especially since the majority of players won't even encounter a 100x battle or a 333x battle. This feeling of having no contribution discourages people from even playing because what's the point? Your playtime will have less than 0.1% of impact on the Splatfest. The addition of Tricolor is interesting to say the least, but it ultimately fails as the new Splatfest battle mode. Whenever I play Splatfest, I don't even engage in Tricolor because it's way too chaotic. There's simply too much going on for me to even concentrate, and the 3 different colors end up giving me a headache. Tricolor is fun in theory, but out of control in practice. Splatoon 3 Splatfests are already too divisive with 3 teams, but now that there's 3 individual modes, Pro, Open, and Tricolor, Splatfests are pointless outside of Super Sea Snails. Sorry, there's a lot I have on here about Splatfest. We're almost done, I promise. I never noticed this because the only time I play Turf War is during the Splatfest. But you know how in Open, when you're in a room playing with friends, when you hit stop, the room pauses until everyone readies up again. Well, when you do the exact same thing in Turf War, which includes Splatfest, the room does not pause. Instead, you'll simply get booted from the room while the others continue on searching for a game if they hit A. There's a lot of things Nintendo has done that make me question reality, but this one is up there amongst the most confusing. Why have the Open and Turf rooms operate differently? Anyways, on a final note, Splatoon 3 did not provide any shifty stations as playable stages during Splatfest like in Splatoon 2. Now again, I wasn't a huge fan of shifty stations, but since I love Splatoon 2 Splatfest for some reason, I'm gonna go ahead and say that bringing them back was a missed opportunity. Wait, didn't I review that section? If you're like me, you were not a big fan of Splatoon 2 stages. Some were good, most felt mid, and a few were trash. But in Splatoon 3, all the stages are either mid or trash. Undertow and Hagelfish are the only good ones in my mind. When I think back on past Splatoon stages that I actually liked, Old Hammerhead Bridge, Urchin Underpass, Blackbelly Skate Park from 1 and 2, The Reef, and Snapper Canal make the list. There is no Splatoon 3 stage that I actually enjoy. The main issue with current day Splatoon 3 stages is that they're too small and condensed, lacking any originality or memorability. Most of them just feel generic without anything really special about them. The only thing unique about these stages is that they're breeding grounds for Zuka. Honestly, Zuka makes these stages so much more annoying. Anyone wonder why Zuka wasn't super annoying in Splatoon 1? Because the stages back then were like really big compared to Splatoon 3 stages, and contained different terrain levels. But since most current stages today are so small and flat, it's easy pickings with Zuka.
Worse than death?
Although Zuka does drive me crazy, the number one frustrating thing about some of Splatoon 3 stages is how they ported good Splatoon 1 stages and made them into trash stages. Mahi Mahi Resort was arguably one of the best stages in its era. Hammerhead was pretty solid too, but now they're both bad stages that hardly see any competitive action. Bluefin was never good in Splatoon 1, but somehow it feels even worse now. I don't like how the conveyors work, it's way too obvious to the other team. Splatoon 3 not only created a ton of new bad stages, but also ruined a couple of ancient, great stages. Interesting how they hardly touched any of the returning Splatoon 2 stages. Do the Splatoon 3 devs have something against Splatoon 1?
You make a game that so.
Okay, this next one was by far the most popular complaint I received, so I'm gonna do my best to incorporate every angle of complaint about Splatoon 3's update cycle. When an update happened in Splatoon 2, it felt like a big deal. Whenever something was added or changed, I wanted to know exactly what changed. But nowadays, when an update drops in Splatoon 3, even the new seasons, I just don't feel that same excitement and anticipation that I once did. Updates and changes in today's era feel minuscule and insignificant because the updates never seem to address anything serious. Yeah, we get some new maps and some new weapons that entertain us for a week or two, but they never add or change anything to the competitive scene because the new stuff isn't usually good, causing most of us to forget about it. The only weapon to do this is Pencil, which was literally dropped on the very first season all the way back in 2022. It did take some time for people to realize Pencil's potential and value, especially once Zuka increased its explosion damage by a third though. The only other time Nintendo made a serious update in Splatoon 3 was the machine nerf, which was one of the first patches. This nerf slowed Machine's sloshing rate, thus causing Machine to fall off entirely as Splatoon 3's first meta main weapon. That update was impactful because it rocked the realm of competitive Splatoon 3. Ever since the Machine update and the Zuka buff, which both happened well over a year ago, Nintendo has been making barely noticeable nerfs to meta weapons like Pencil and Shot, but they haven't caused anything to change. These days, Nintendo is hyper-focused on what's popular in the Japanese circle. If a Japanese team won a Japanese tournament using triple ink brush and dapple doolies, all those weapons would be nerfed next patch. If Nintendo isn't going to change anything with abusable weapons, so be it. But then at least create something new to put into the meta mix or buff an existing weapon that can compete in the top tier. Nobody wants an unchanging, boring, uncounterable meta which Splatoon 2 suffered in its final stage.
Because I got really shitty customer service skills.
I think the main culprit of this problem of Splatoon 3's updates feeling outdated and out of touch is the update structure itself. Splatoon 3 updates drop every 3 months, another incorporation of the theme number 3, usually consisting of new weapons, a new stage, and possibly a new sub or a special. Sometimes in between these 3-month gaps, they drop very small updates for fixing bugs, reassessing points for special or patches. But I hate how Nintendo laid out the expectations and timing for updates. When has Nintendo ever lived up to anyone's expectations on literally anything? Hindsight, I believe it would have been better for them to keep the timing of updates hidden like they did in Splatoon 2. Sure, when an update was coming in Splatoon 2, Nintendo would usually drop a trailer a few days before it happened, but the trailer itself was a surprise. In Splatoon 3, the updates are no surprise. We know when they're coming, we know what to expect. The thrill factor is gone.
Because then I gotta come out here and nobody wants that.
3 months is a long time to wait for updates as well. In any gaming community, players complain about certain aspects and protest that their creators hear their unrest and make the necessary changes. The Splatoon series is no exception to that, but it feels even more true in Splatoon 3. We know the game only updates every 3 months, so if the changes we don't want happen in an update, everyone knows nothing will happen for at least another 3 months. Because of this, people in the community expect even bigger things to happen when the anticipated update finally arrives. More often than not, Usually, the updates don't deliver or provide enough content, causing disappointment. In Splatoon 2, the updates were a bit more sporadic. Sometimes there would be 2 big updates a month apart, and then things would be quiet for almost half a year. But the updates never felt far apart because nobody knew when they would happen. It kept players guessing, intrigued, staying on alert for any potential updates at any moment. Splatoon 2 always kept people guessing, hypothesizing, and debating the future of the game, unaware of what might turn the game upside down. For Splatoon 3, the process is wait 3 months, discuss the new content for a week, then grumble for changes until the next one comes.
That Lowe's charcoal ain't.
The time is finally here for me to address the last disaster of Splatoon 3. When making this video, I reached out to 37 of my Splatoon friends to get their thoughts and opinions on what they don't like about Splatoon 3. Interestingly, no one mentioned the new spawns. Now maybe that's a sign that people like the new spawns, but I am not one of those. Remember the good days returning to the battlefield from your spawn like in Splatoon 1 and 2? Well, in another effort to break off from the standard, the Splatoon 3 devs thought it best to shake things up a bit. Instead of reviving with your teammates in a team spawn on the ground, Nintendo said, "Screw team bonding. You can have your own portable spawn that floats from the sky because we want you to feel like you're being cool in Fortnite and make you feel like you're skydiving but not really." Or maybe they got this idea from a developer from the Tears of the Kingdom. Either way, I miss the old spawn. Spawn camping was definitely a thing back then, and it certainly was a problem to some degree. And I think it could have been avoided by incorporating one theme of Splatoon 3's new map design: higher starting terrain. In practically every Splatoon 3 stage, even if it's a returning stage, right in front of the new spawns, there's always a platform much higher than the ground next to it. And this area is somewhat spacious, so you don't have to worry about getting camped by bombs. With the old spawns, whenever you died, you automatically got sent back to your spawn to respawn. There was no choice. With the new ones, you have the option to respawn or not. Game not going well? You can just hide inside your little pot in the sky. If the old spawns incorporated the new platform design Splatoon 3 has, there would be no need for the invincibility shield mechanism. Actually, wait, no, you would definitely still need it.
All right, you guys got to pay and leave. Let's go.
Overall, Splatoon 3 is a great game on paper. There's a lot of awesome things Splatoon 3 has to offer. It has a lot of new features that previous games never had. It gets a lot of things right, but also gets a lot of things wrong. But no game is perfect. From a casual perspective, with no interaction with the online community, I could totally understand a Splatoon 3 is the best game in the series argument. But from any other point of view, it's plain to me why that's not the case. But everyone's experience is different. Some clicked with Splatoon 3 a lot more than they did with Splatoon 2, and that's okay. Not everyone has the same feelings or experiences with anything, and that's okay. I don't care how bad a Splatoon game is, as long as it's Splatoon, you know I'm gonna play it.
That's what I'm talking about. Who's that new guy?
My cornerstone point is that Splatoon 3 fails to create long-lasting connections with the player, at least for me. But the game is still far from over. There are more updates to come, more excitement to unfold. Who knows, Splatoon 3 may drop an update that changes everything as we know it. After listening to all this, you might think I don't like Splatoon 3, but I do. I don't like it as much as Splatoon 2, but there are a lot of things I appreciate about Splatoon 3. Nothing could ever happen to make me stop playing Splatoon. I would like to leave things with a quote from the wise Bo Squiddly. Any weapon is good in the right hands. Thank you guys so much for watching. I spent a lot of time on this, even though it may not look like that. Video making and editing are not my strong suits, but I really hope you enjoyed your time watching. This has been Forge. Goodbye, friends.